This is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting August the 19th, 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. This week, I'm honoring the request of one of my viewers, Pamela, who asked me if I would be willing to work with the Tarot de Marseille more often in this space. And I have to say I love the request because right now I'm in the space with my own tarot work that I am loving me some Tarot de Marseille. So this is going to be an easy request to honor. Once again, I'm going to be working with one of my favorite Tarot de Marseille decks, and that is the CBD Tarot de Marseille by the late Dr. Yoav Ben-Dov, which is now available through US Game Systems Incorporated. In addition to honoring this request, I'm also going to be unveiling a spread that I was inspired to create, or in this case, probably tweak or modify is probably the better words, because of a reading that I did with the TDM earlier in the week, a personal reading for me. So in the next segment, I'm going to be sharing little tidbits of that personal reading, and then we're going to move into taking a look at the spread that I was inspired to tweak and modify, and see what cards turn up in that spread. For those of you who may not be interested in taking a look at my personal reading, I will be leaving a timestamp in the description box below so you can go ahead and click on that and take yourself right to the reading. So now that I've set things up, let's take a closer look at those cards that made up my personal reading and then move on to this week's reading. And here we are with the cards that turned up in my personal line of 5 reading that I did using the Tarot de Marseille, specifically the CBD Tarot. And I was asking the cards for insight or guidance pertaining to my path or direction with cartomancy as a whole. And the card that struck me was the card in the middle of the layout. Now, aside from that, the other thing to note was that the 4 cards flanking the center card, which is the 7 of Cups, flanking this card were all majors. So that was something of note. But coming back to the middle card, I was looking at the middle card, and I'll hold it up just a little closer. And one of the things that struck me was the layout of the pips. They were arranged, or they looked to me as being arranged in the layout or the arrangement of the cards that I use for the weekly spread, right? We have 3 cups at the top, 1 cup in the center, and then 3 more at the bottom, right? It looks just like that layout. I was struck by that because I've been working with that layout in these videos over the last few weeks. And as I was looking at this particular card and noting that about the weekly spread layout and how it looked to me, I got the idea for the reading that I'm going to be doing, or the spread I should say for the reading in the next segment. So again, I just wanted to show you, and for those of you who are working with Tarot de Marseille in particular, how you could take a look at the arrangements of the pips and see something that pertains to you on a personal level, right? So no other card reader perhaps would come up with the idea that the cups are arranged in a format or a layout that matches a spread that he or she is working with in their card readings, right? But now, those of you who are watching this and you work with Tarot de Marseille, you might think about that, right? That the arrangements of certain pips could be ways that you could lay out the cards in a spread. And so I just wanted to show that. So if you are interested in watching me work through the actual reading as it pertained to the question, if there's enough interest, I may go ahead and film a separate video showing you what I came up with in terms of the answer to that question. But now let's move on to the next segment where we'll do this week's reading using the inspiration that I came up with from the 7 of Cups. And here we are with the cards on the table, and I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on my usual intention for these weekly general readings, and that is We are asking for the guidance, for the insight, for the advice, and the information that's going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the experiences of the upcoming week. All right, I'm feeling one more time. Be good. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Now I'm going to fan out the cards. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be working with a layout that was inspired by a reading that I did. And I'm looking for 8 cards in the fan that are getting my attention because this one consists of 8 cards. We're moving 1 card beyond the weekly spread I have been doing. I'm looking for the final card. Here it is right here. All right. So those are the cards that have been selected. I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up. Put that to one side. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and count back. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I have all my cards. I did my double check. So now I'm going to begin laying them out. Now, the idea for this spread is similar to the weekly spread except for the fact that we have an additional card. So the way it gets laid out is we start the bottom with the first card and then we move up. For those of you who are familiar with tarot spreads, this is known as the horseshoe spread because it goes into the shape of a horseshoe. But that is not what I was told to call it. So just like in the weekly spread, every card in the layout represents one day in the week. So here's the thing. I'm here in the United States. So in the United States, we have an expression when it comes to the week that the middle of the week is called hump day, right? So when I was looking at the Seven of Cups, which I talked about in the previous segment, I was looking at that and the idea of creating a spread with the middle of the week card representing hump day, and then the visual came to me as a horseshoe. But the idea here is that the middle card represents hump day, which is the middle of the week, and getting over the hump. Now, typically that would be like Wednesday if you go with the idea that the first card would be Sunday in that regard. But because I read the first card as starting off the week as Monday, because my readings go from Monday to Sunday, this is going to be Thursday, right? So we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, getting over the hump, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, you're wondering, what about the last card? And so I have the last card still here in my hand. It goes underneath the card that represents hump day for me. And then this would be the overall theme for the week, right? And how do all the cards play into the theme, right? So now, and I'll probably be doing this with some other systems that I normally work with. And what I also envisioned with this is that we could pair the first card and the last card, right? Because they're on the same level. The second card and the sixth card, they're on the same level. The third card and the fifth card on the same level, right? And then we could also pair these. And so that would be interesting to see if we can do that with any of the cards this week, but also going forward when I work with Lenormand, Kipper, Gypsy cards, things like that, it'll be very interesting, right? So that is my intention. This is the first time I'm using it, so we'll just see how it goes, right? So what I would do in this particular case, using this layout, I would look at the theme card, right? So the overall theme for the week is a card that has shown up before using this deck. So here we have the Ace of Wands. So the Ace of Wands can represent new things, right? The aces for me represent something new, the beginning of something, the start of something, the potential for the future, you know, those kinds of things, because that's what I equate with the ace or the number one, right? In this regard, the Ace of Wands for me can represent, you know, something pertaining to new work or business, because the suit of wands for me represents work or business related matters. So this could be new work. So somebody could be dealing with a new job, you know, or a new business endeavor, right? So again, work and business. Now, suit of wands for me can also represent something of a social nature. So this could be, the theme could be beginning or the beginning stages of becoming social or becoming more social. And because of all the design elements that look like little flickers of flame, for me, the Ace of Wands can also represent a creative spark, because wands can represent creative endeavor. So a creative spark or a passion. And so this could be one or two ways. It could be a new passion, something new altogether, or that something is rekindling an old passion. So it can either be the beginning stages of a new passion or the rekindling of an old passion. I sometimes hear the song Relight My Fire with this card, so I'm hearing that in my head now. For somebody, it could just be a matter of getting a passion reignited. Right, so again, the Ace of Wands can represent something new pertaining to work or business, a new job, a new business project, a new creative endeavor, a new passion, or reigniting the spark or the passion in one's life. Right, so that's how I would look at the Ace of Wands as a potential theme. So now, having said that, let's now look at the first card, the card that's representing Monday. And here we have the Page of Cups. So the Page of Cups, first off, can represent news or messages. All the pages in tarot for me can represent news or messages. So this could be news or messages of an emotional nature, because cups is the suit of feelings and emotions. Right? It could also be news or messages pertaining to a child. Pages in tarot for me can represent young people and children. So this could be a message, news or message pertaining to a child. Now what I love about the image is that the page is looking into the cup. And if you notice, in his other hand, he has removed the lid, right? So if we go with the idea this could be about news or messages, it could be, you know, news or messages in which the lid is coming off, right? So that could be something being revealed, right? Because he's looking into the cup, right? So there's that idea about, you know, keeping a lid on something, or, you know, taking the lid off of something. And that's in the metaphorical sense. Right, so now this could also be an approach. I tend to look at the court cards in tarot as asking us to consider a particular approach. So here, the approach could be that we're being asked to consider taking a closer look or a deeper look into a situation. That would be symbolized by the cup. Right, he's taken the lid off and now he's looking into the cup to see what's inside. He's taking a closer look or a deeper look, right? So is there a possibility that we may need to examine something more closely, right, more deeply? And that would be playing on the idea that the suit of cups is associated with the element of water, right? And we have this idea about deeply, right? Looking at something more deeply. Now, if we are talking about, someone new on the job, in the workplace, then this card would suggest that you're being encouraged to make a great first impression. That's one of my meanings for this card, is making a great first impression. And if we're talking about creative endeavors, this is a nice card to have as well, because this particular page is a very creative type. So it could be that we're being asked, if you're not the artistic type, then it could just be about a creative approach to something, right? How can we apply a more creative approach to whatever the situation is that we are walking into? He's on his feet, right? So he's walking. As we're walking throughout the week, there may be experiences where we have to apply a bit of creativity, right? The word that's actually coming to me is ingenuity. But that is what I'm seeing with the Page of Cups. The last thing I want to say as I put the card down is that the page is walking, looks like he's walking out of the line, right? So for some of us, it could be that there may be a need to walk out of or walk away from an emotional situation, right? Because he's not facing all the other cards. So that could just be another message for some of us. Is what emotional situation, especially if we've taken the lid off of something, right? We've taken the lid off, we've seen it, something's been revealed. And as a result of that, it may be giving us the impression that it's time to walk out of that situation. And it could be before you get further involved, right? Because a page, just much like the ace, can represent a person who is in a learning stage of development, just starting out, somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of experience or maturity under his or her belt, right? So it could just be something that's in its beginning stages. And we may be getting the impression to step out of the situation before we get further involved. But it's making me feel it may be something having to do with something of an emotional nature because of the Suit of Cups. So that's how I would look at the Page of Cups. So now let's move on to Tuesday. And here we have, okay, so here we have the Six of Coins. So on Tuesday, there may be something having to do with our material lives or material concerns. That's the Suit of Coins for me, right? And coins are transactional, so this may have something to do with money. So on Tuesday, there may be talks about money because the number 6 for me can represent communication. So we may have some sort of discussion about money. And the interesting thing to note about the image is that it looks to me like a round table, right? So that could be, a conversation where more than one party is involved. If we go with the idea that the Ace of Wands is talking about something in the business sense or in the workplace or the working sense, then this could just be a conference or some kind of meeting, and it may have to do with money in particular. If not money, then another thing that's coming to me, because the number 6 can also represent responsibility. It could just be a discussion about responsibilities and the value of responsibility, because the coins can represent what we value. Now, if I bring this back to money and not about work or business per se, then this could just be about being financially responsible, right? Now, I will say this. If we are talking about something having to do with a creative endeavor or business, something of that nature, the 6 of Coins for me can represent communications like I already talked about, but specifically computers and technology. So there may be something having to do with computers and technology for some people, especially if that is a field that you work in, or that if you are starting something new with work, that maybe computers and technology are going to be playing a big part of that. Now, one of my meanings for this card is also a smartphone, so there may be something, and that plays with both computers and communication. So there may be something for someone having to do with his or her smartphone. So if we go with the idea that the Ace of Wands could be talking about something new, then it may be somebody maybe putting energy into a new smartphone and maybe taking a look at his or her existing plan or adding additional lines, something of that nature. And then the last thing I will say about the Six of Coins is that in relation to the Ace of Wands talking about work or business, this is a card for me that can represent counseling. And this would be counseling of all kinds. So this could be counseling in the traditional sense, or this could be counseling in the metaphysical sense. Like when I am giving readings or conducting readings with my private clients, that is a form of counseling, right? And with that in mind, this card can represent astrology. In particular, it can represent astrology, but I widen that to include all types of spiritual counseling using all spiritual modalities. So again, the Six of Coins can be talking about money. Oh, and as I'm saying that, I just realized one of the other meanings for me is that this card can represent a raise in pay. So there may be somebody who is going to be in discussion or negotiations for a raise in pay, right? So again, Six of Coins can be about money being discussed or financial responsibility. It could be that there's going to be a round table type of discussion. And again, that could be about money or the value of responsibility and each party contributing to whatever the agenda is or whatever the end goal is, right, in that particular conversation. But it can also represent something having to do with computers, technology, and maybe in particular smartphones. So that is the Six of Coins. So now let's take a look at the card that represents Wednesday. And here we have, here we have the Three of Swords. So the 3 is a number for me that can represent creativity because the 3 is governed in tarot by the Empress, and the Empress for me is a card that talks about creativity. So we have that element of creativity being mentioned again. So here we have a card that can represent, being creative with our thinking. So this is creative thinking. It can also represent the growth and development of ideas. So if we go with the idea that the Six of Coins was talking about, a round table discussion or conversation of some kind, then this would be how do we grow and develop that conversation, right? How do we take that information and put it to use? That's what this card is, right? Because behind the sword is some foliage that looks to represent growth to me, right? So it's about taking an idea and growing it, developing it, maybe expanding on it. The 3 is also about expansion. And that could also be, if we're talking about work or business, it could be, ideas to help expand the work or the business, right? Now, the Three of Swords is a card for me that is known as the artist card. So here we have, again have that idea about creativity, right? So it could be somebody is needing to consider the ways that they want to grow and develop maybe their artistic work. But again, if you're not an artist specifically, then this is just about a creative touch or a creative approach, those kinds of things. Now, on the challenging side, for me, the suit of swords can represent problems, troubles, obstacles, blocks. And here we have the potential for a problem to grow and develop, right? And if that's the case, it's based on some sort of misunderstanding or some sort of confusion that we need to clear up before it gets worse. Right, so I'm seeing that. And now if I go with the idea that the Six of Coins, the previous card, is about counseling, then this could be counseling. Remember, there's all different forms of counseling, but some type of counseling with the idea of taking a look at a problem and seeing what we can do to circumvent the problem before it grows and develops. Another one of my meanings for this card is that this is known as the X-ray card, so it's about taking a closer look at something, just like we talked about with the Page of Cups. So there's that idea about a closer examination, taking a closer look at something. But for me, the overall message of this card is about being creative in our mindset, being creative with our ideas, our thinking. Right? And taking an idea and how can we begin to move that forward. And that comes from the tip of the sword breaking beyond the two curved swords that are connecting at the top. Right? And I'm seeing another message that I want to say here. So as I talked about the idea about the sword, breaking through the curved swords and the tip is showing, then this could be about receiving a tip. Remember, I talked about this idea that swords can represent information and communication, right? So this could be about receiving some kind of tip that moves us forward, that gets us to break some kind of block or move beyond some kind of obstacle or challenge, right? Remember, that's what the suit means in the negative sense, right? Challenges, blocks, and obstacles. But we may get some information that helps us begin the process of moving beyond whatever that problem is, whatever that challenge is, whatever that block is. So that's what I'm seeing with the Three of Swords. And that is Wednesday. So now let's take a look at the card that represents the hump, so to speak, and that's Thursday. Okay, here we have another card that shows up when I work with Tarot de Marseille quite often, and here we have the King of Wands. So now we have ruling majority. We have two cards from the suit of Wands, so there may be something on Thursday having to do with work or business. As I'm saying that could be work and business in a literal sense, so that could be somebody on the job or business that you have, or this could be work or business that we need to attend to. That could be work we need to do or business that we need to attend to, right? Now, kings can represent a person who's in a position of power or authority. So if we go with the idea that the Ace of Wands is talking about, for some people, a new job or something having to do with the workplace, this would be the boss, right? So there may be something having to do with a boss on one's job. And remember now, this is in the position of the hump, what we have to get over, right? So there may be something around a challenge with a boss. If we go with the idea that the Three of Swords can talk about confusion and misunderstanding, it's a card that comes before it, then there may be some sort of confusion or misunderstanding with a person in authority in the workplace, right? And something along those lines needs to be cleared up. Now, it could also be, too, if I talked with the Six of Coins about being a raise, and then the Three of Swords follows that, then there may be some sort of confusion or misunderstanding regarding a raise, and that involves the boss, right? Somebody who's in charge. This could be a supervisor, a boss, could even be the CEO of a company. Somebody who's in a position of authority in the workplace or the business, right? So I'm seeing that. It could also be if you have your own business, then this card would represent you. This would be the person who's at the top. And I just realized as I put the card down, this would be the person who's at the top, right? And the King of Wands is at the top of the diagram, the top of the layout, right? And sometimes when I look at this card, I look at, I'm gonna hold it up again. I look at the fact that his scepter looks to me like a stylus, which is a fancy pen. And I always imagine that the box at his feet is like when uh, the UPS person, you know, and that would be a carrier service here in the United States. But when the UPS person comes to the house with a package and they have those electronic devices, 6 of coins, for us to sign, and we have to sign with either a stylus or with our finger, right? So I'm seeing that, so there may be something that needs to be signed for, or that there may be something having to do with perhaps a contract or something of that nature, because I sometimes see this card as about, you know, signing on the dotted line or signing in the box, right? But if it's not that, then this could just be about writing in particular, and that's another form of creativity, right? So it could just be a matter of somebody needing to maybe get on top of or get under control his or her writing project. And that would make sense for me because one of my meanings for the Ace of Wands is that it can represent a manuscript. So if there is somebody who's watching this video and you are a writer or an author, then this could be the week that you may need to really think about how you're going to get over the hump if you've been having a block, creative block perhaps, with your writing project, right? And then that would make sense. That would go back down here to the Page of Cups. Remember the Page of Cups? I talked about being a creative person, and we're not facing any of the cards in the line, right? So this could potentially be something that we're struggling with, right? So I'm seeing here that somebody may be dealing with writer's block, right? And you're being asked, how can you get past the block, right? I'm seeing this like somebody is looking at a computer screen if you're writing electronically, and you're just sitting in front of the computer with a Word document open, and it's just a blank page, right? That's the image that's coming to me in my mind, right? And so it's about how can we move beyond that. So again, King of Wands can represent a boss, supervisor, CEO, somebody who is an authority when it comes to business. If you're self-employed, this would represent you. But I'm also seeing it about, you know, being creative, you know, especially as a writer. I'm seeing writing specifically and needing to stay on top of that, especially if you're having challenges or problems with that, blocks. Right? So now it's very interesting. He's looking towards the next card. So let's see what he's looking at. And here we have, oh yeah. So here we have the Chariot. The Chariot is all about career. So again, we have this repeated idea about something taking place in the workplace or with business. But this is also a card about moving forward. This is about progression, advancement, and moving forward. So I like this. So it could just be a matter of that for that writer person, it could be about having your focus on moving forward. What can you do to move things along? What can you do to get the ball rolling, right? Again, going with the idea that the Chariot is a vehicle, right? It's about movement, right? And it could be a matter of moving beyond the block. This is very nice, right? Making some progress. Now, in another regard, I talked about the idea here with the theme here about being a new project, you know, or coming back to an existing project. But this makes me feel like in Hollywood, they have a term when it comes to projects they call about getting a green light. I'm seeing something being green lighted with this card, right? So that could be the traffic light with the green light would be the signal to go ahead, move forward, those kinds of things. And in Hollywood, like I said, when a project gets green lighted, that's a term for getting it moving forward. So it would be like, what is the next stage in that process of development, right? And then that would make sense because the charioteer could, if we connect these two cards, remember this was about growth and development, ideas, informations, growth and development. You know, then we have, okay, then we have a round table, people getting together with the idea or the purpose of moving something forward. You know, and included in that process is the person who's heading up the project, or like who's going to be in charge of that. So I'm seeing that now. In another sense, if we're talking about the Three of Swords representing, misunderstanding, confusion, the possibility of a problem growing and developing, then both the King of Wands and the Chariot could represent this. King symbolically represent power and control, right? So if you've watched my videos for any length of time, you know that I'm always good for talking about, what do we need to do to retain control of something or get control of something or get something under control? What do we need to do to kind of assume or resume our sense of personal power? I'm going somewhere with that. So now going with the Chariot, this could be about getting back into the driver's seat of your own life experience, right? So what do we need to do to get behind the wheel of our own lives this week? That's about what kind of responsibility are we willing to either assume or resume to move forward. Now remember, we had the Six of Coins over here, and the six, for me, as a theme, can talk about responsibility, right? Now, in the literal sense, if we go with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, this is Friday, moving into the weekend, then this could literally be about travel, right? And there may be some sort of confusion or misunderstanding around travel or travel plans, right? And I'm seeing, let's add this in the mix there. Then this could be about, an electronic device. That could be GPS. So I'm seeing, and with all of that, if I'm looking at this as GPS symbolically or literally, then this could be about, direction, needing direction, making sure that the route is laid out, that you know where you're going, all those kinds of things. And that could be in the literal sense or in the metaphorical sense, right? And somebody, if we're talking about passion and creative spark, getting the mojo back, then these two cards could be talking about there's some sort of confusion and misunderstanding regarding direction in life. And what can you do to clear that confusion or that sense of misunderstanding up, right? Before it gets worse. Right, so that's how I'm looking at all the cards so far. So now that was Friday. Let's take a look at Saturday. And here we have, So here we have the moon. So the moon for me is a card that can also be talking about confusion and uncertainty, right? That's one of its chief's meanings, is confusion and uncertainty. Now, in a more positive sense, the moon could talk about being led and guided by one's intuition, right? So this could just be about, using your instinct. That would be the dogs or the wolves on the card. They go with their instincts. So this could just be a day where we trust our instincts, right? Now, this brings me back to a possibility that I talked about with last week's reading about our intuition and psychic nature. All of that still is in play with the moon, right? So I'm just going to say, because I don't know this for sure, there may be something about a particular phase that the moon is in next week, because I'm filming this on a Friday afternoon. So it'll be interesting to see what phase the moon is in next week, or maybe even the sign that the moon is in next week. because this card for me can represent lunar phases and lunar cycles. Now, I will say in the literal sense, this card can represent night. So there may be something for somebody about driving at night, Chariot, Moon, driving at night, right? That they need to be mindful of, right? And that would make sense. Maybe if you're going to an area that you've never been before, it would be helpful to make sure that you have the directions, GPS, all that sort of stuff worked out. Because now the 6 of coins is mirroring the moon, right? So if we're talking about driving at night, then there may be something about making sure that you have directions with you. So either your smartphone or your GPS is set, those kinds of things, so that you don't get lost, right? Confusion, uncertainty, bewilderment, right? Now, I will say, I talked about the 6 of coins representing counseling, right? And I talked about either in the traditional sense or in the metaphysical sense. With that in mind, then of course, if we go with the idea that this is talking about intuition and being psychic, then this is psychic counseling, right? So there may be somebody who's doing work or going back into work as a psychic counselor, meaning like you're giving readings, that kind of thing. Oh, and I will say this, for some people, because if you watch these videos long enough, you know I harp on this to some degree. This could be about the growth and development of your psychic ability or your intuitive ability, whatever word you want to use. Here's the thing. If that's the case, then the 6 of coins is saying, especially if you've been maybe doing readings for free to gain more experience, this could be the time where you start thinking about how much am I going to be charging for my services, because this is about a raise in pay. So one or two things. If you're doing it for free, this could be a nod that it's time to start getting paid for your reading work. And if you already have a fee, then this could be the time where you consider, is it time to up my game, and with that, up my fees, right? Because this represents a raise in pay, right? Now, another thing that I'm seeing in the moment could be somebody who's contemplating doing distance work. If this is about computers and technology, and this is about being intuitive or psychic, how can you do that work in a much larger way? You know, I'm just using myself as an example to give somebody something to think about. But I read for people in different parts of the United States where I'm located, and also in different parts of the world. And I use Skype for that, right? This is computer and technology. Now, I also, because I talked about smartphones, I also switched to a different phone. So I could also maybe do FaceTime. Now, I just told you what kind of phone I have because I used the word FaceTime, right? But I did that with the intention as a business person, maybe potentially being able to work with or be in service to more people. And then that would make sense for me because the King of Wands in that regard could be me as a business person, right? I'm a solopreneur. I'm in business by myself and I work for myself, right? So I'm seeing that. So that's an additional message. So one, again, my first impulse was to talk about this idea about driving at night and making sure that if that's the case, that you have yourself ready to go, especially if you're prone for, losing your way, getting lost, that kind of thing, right? But also, too, for somebody who's doing psychic work and getting paid for that work. Now, I will say this. I thought I was done. The last thing, because I talked about a round table or a discussion about a raise in pay, that kind of thing pertaining to somebody on the workplace. There may be something having to do with a timetable or a schedule or a calendar for that. And if that's the case, whenever I get the moon card throws that into question, because it usually can represent something on the calendar changing or a timetable changing. And because it's a major arcana card, I would say it may be due to circumstances or factors or influences that are beyond your control, right? Meaning that it's not you, and it may be just things that you have no control over. Isn't that interesting with the king talking about being in control, right? And I thought I was done again. Very interesting, I had talked about this idea about something being green lighted, right? And I specifically talked about Hollywood. For me, the moon card can represent the entertainment industry. So there's something for somebody about somebody who may be creative or somebody who may be moving more into the entertainment industry. Because I'm seeing that as well. Okay, so now let's round this reading out, taking a look at the last card. And here we have, oh, very interesting. So now we have another pair of ruling majority cards. And here we have the Five of Coins. So we have, taking a look at the makeup of the reading this week, we have 2 coins, we have 2 wands, and we have 2 trumps, right? Okay, so there's a thing about the trumps or the majors would represent major issues, important issues or events, something significant that could be taking place this week. And then the wands would represent work or business, and then the coins would represent, in addition to the wands representing work or business, and this would be about money, finances, and even career, right? So there's all of that as possibilities for the week ahead. Now, coming back to this card, the 5 for me can always represent change. So there's something about financial changes. So this could be financial activity, money changing hands. The number 5 for me can represent the hand because the hand has 5 fingers, right? So there's something about, handling money, financial activity, financial changes in money, and that would make sense. If we're talking about a promotion, a raise in pay, that would be a change in income, right? A change in finances. Right, so that's one way of looking at this. So now the other thing here could be that if somebody is feeling inspired with the Ace of Wands, could be inspiration. Remember I talked about creative spark or passion being rekindled for something. Then this could be about making changes in one's physical world. So now that could just go beyond money, right? That could be physical changes, material changes. So it could be changes in one's environment, changes within one's own body. So that could be, I'm just giving some examples. So this could be, working out. This could be about, a change in hairstyle. And remember, now, if I put this card down and it mirrors the first card, right? Page of Cups. What was one of the things I said about the Page of Cups? I said about making a great first impression, right? So here we have, what changes are we willing to make that would allow us to make a great first impression? So this could be, of course, this is about the physical. So this could be about physical changes. So that could be something about having to do with hair. I'm thinking about like somebody getting a haircut or a hairstyle. Even, maybe changing color of one's hair. This could be somebody going to the gym and working out, getting fit. This could be somebody making a change in diet. Now another thing here is that sometimes this card for me can represent going back to the monetary aspect of it, and talking about financial changes. Then this could be shopping and an expense or an expenditure. Right, so somebody may be considering, they're not sure, but they're considering putting money towards another car or a new car, something of that, because this could be literally represent a car. Or if somebody's in business for themselves, they need to be taking a look at their expenses and maybe needing to make some changes in what they're putting money into regarding their business. And why? Because there's some uncertainty about that. Playing on this card coming before this card, this would be uncertainty about expenses. And the only way you would know that is to take a closer look, closer examination. Remember, we had that with the 3 of Swords and the Page of Cups, right? But this could also be that somebody is inspired or motivated to make some changes. You're getting the go-ahead to do that. And then this card, the moon in between, would be about maybe something having to do with your nightly activities. What are you doing at night? Because it could be about making changes at night. Now, as I talked about that, if we're talking about making some monetary changes, I'm just seeing this in the moment. This may not just only be about a promotion or a raise, but this could be about getting another job, because I'm all of a sudden I'm seeing this card representing moonlighting, right? If we're talking about driving at night, then this could be somebody driving to a night job. Why? Because they're wanting to make some more money, right? To change their financial picture, right? So that's how I would look at that. As we round out the week, it would be, I think the overall lesson here at the end of the week is taking a look at maybe what we've been giving our time and attention to, because that's a sign about we're saying what we value. The coins could be talking about what it is that we value, and it could be things that we spend money on or put money into. That's an assessment of what we value. So it could just be a matter of taking a look at what we are putting our energy and our resources into at the end of the week or by the end of the week, so we get a better idea about what are we saying about ourselves and what we value. And on that note, I will go ahead and round out and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. One that has a lot of inspiration and motivation and a lot of value. Take care.